Hello again and welcome. So this is another video in my series of developing a 3D model of the early medieval city of Tours, France, around the year 800. And I'm going to produce this model at 4 or 5 different periods in its history: the year 50, the year 150, the year 400, 800, and then another one around the year 1000, so that students of medieval history can kind of see the development and change of one particular city over time. Right here, we have a construction of the medieval city with most of its religious houses in place that would have existed around the year 800. So we have the major rampart around the city. We have 16 of the towers that surrounded it. We have the east gate, the west gate, the east gate, and the north gate. The north gate led to a bridge that crossed the river Loire. And what we don't see here yet is that there was a water mill that existed right around here, and it carried water up to an aqueduct that stretched and followed this road, this old Roman road going south. As we move into the castrum, or the rampart around the city, we notice a few important structures. This, of course, is the amphitheater, which was on the south side of the city. Adjacent to that is the Domus Ecclesiae, which is the dwelling house for the bishop. And we know that the amphitheater was still around in the year 800 because the bishop and many of the nobility that lived and resided in Tours built their houses into the amphitheater. They built it into the existing construction. What we see here, though, are three different buildings: the main church and two adjacent kind of monasteries and dwelling houses. So here we have one for Gervais and Protais, and then we have another one for Saint Marie and St. John the Baptist. As we leave the city, though, we notice that there is more development kind of happening around here. So let's explore why that is, moving from east to west. Right here, we have the only representation so far of a domicile in the city tour. There are about 30 or so other ones kind of spread out throughout here. This is the only one I have added right now because it's one of the largest. There was a stable there and several living quarters. As we move west, though, we see these old Roman roads kind of still in place, as they were. Here we have the Basilica of St Vincent, and as we move further west, we have the Roman temple, which I mentioned in an earlier video. The state of this Roman temple around the year 800 is not entirely clear. As we go north, closer to the Loire, we see that we have the monastery of Saint Julien. And as we keep going west, we notice that there are a lot more religious institutions around the Basilica of San Martn. This is because the economy of Tours really kind of is spread out early in its history. A lot of it's going to be centered around this area, but around the year 800, from about 600 to 800, what we see is the economy really kind of develop around the Basilica of San Martn. And it does so in two different ways. First, there is an economic development with regard to construction for religious houses. So here we have the Monastery of St. Vincent. We have the Basilica of Peter and Paul. This is a cemetery that was used. This is the baptistry that's on the south side of the basilica. Here we have the monastery founded by I'm never good at pronouncing Merovingian names, Radegonda. And then here we have the monastery founded by Monegundis. These are two women who founded monasteries adjacent to the Basilica of San Martn, and they are recorded in the History of Gregory of Tours. And out here we have the Basilica of St. Lodoire. So what we see here are kind of some of the primary constructions. What we're going to see happen really around the 10th century, so the early 900s, is a castrum, or a rampart, develop around the basilica, as the basilica begins to exercise even greater autonomy than it already did in 800, and start to kind of have its own economic boom during the 9th century. But one of the things I should highlight is what's going to happen in the 9th century. Two things are going to occur. The chief thing that's going to happen is that this wall, the castrum around the eastern part of the city, which was originally built by the Romans, is going to be fortified, significantly fortified. And that's going to be done by a man named Charles the Bald, the king of the Franks. What he's going to do is he's going to fortify the city because of one primary concern: the easy access of this river here, the Loire. The Loire will run east to west and eventually turn south around central eastern France and go all the way down into the mountains. But if you follow the river west, what you'll find is that it connects to the Atlantic Ocean after winding for a bit. And what this means is that it's going to be a prime target for Viking invasions. And in fact, the Vikings are going to have several attacks along the Loire River and actually burn down several monasteries. One of the ways Charles the Bald, the king of the Franks, tries to account for this is to build up stronger fortifications. He does this in two ways, like I said. The first way is he's going to strengthen these walls, thicken them, and reinforce them, and then he's also going to strengthen and reinforce these towers here, so that the city of Tours will have a very powerful castrum. The second way in which Tours is going to change towards the end of the ninth century is again with a defensive perimeter around what is quickly becoming the more popular part of the city during the ninth century, the area here around the Basilica of San Martn. So this is what we have so far. In the next video, you'll see that I'm going to add some of the domiciles with blocking out, and then once we get all that laid out, we can start having a lot of fun by bringing the city to life, adding realistic characteristics, adding terrain by using a height map, and also adding in some real meshes. So these buildings don't look like kind of 3D blocks. Instead, they actually will look like real houses and real buildings. And then after that, we can start adding in some people to populate the city and really make this city feel like a lived in city. That's all for now, though. Thank you for listening.